What's up, guys? How's it going? It is Matt here. So as usual, today's video is brought to you by Call Beyond Duty Coffee. I'm a big fan of their coffee and I absolutely love it. So go look in the description. You will find the link to it if you want to try it out. Now, what I wanted to talk about today is, I guess you could say my baptism by fire. My baptism by fire. I've been doing this channel for a while, and I've talked about, and I see people commenting and responding to other people's comments, that this instructor, we like this guy and this instructor because he bases stuff on real world experience and that type of thing. So I wanted to do something very different today than anything that I've ever done. And I want to tell you about what happened in my very first firefight I was ever in. And this is over at Iraq. Now, there's a lot of myths out there by various instructors in the tactical community and stuff like that regarding what's going to happen when you get into a firefight, how your body's going to function, the way how it's going to react and stuff like that. Now, I know that everyone's a little bit different and different people react different ways, and I was also well trained before I went into it. But I just want to talk to you what happened, what I went through when I got into my first firefight, and kind of what I learned from it. Now, to sum up the firefight in a few words, I would say exhaustion, fear. There's definitely fear in there. There was morality and mistakes. All right, that's the best way how I could sum it up about what happened in there if I'm just using words for it. But words isn't enough to explain what actually happened. Now, if you guys don't know what my background is, I did 2 tours in Iraq as a Marine Corps rifleman, and yes, the backpack behind me says Army because I was also a member of the Arizona Army National Guard. My deployments, however, I was a rifleman in the Marine Corps. That's when I was overseas, active duty Marine Corps, a part of 1st Battalion, 7th Marine, Suicide Charlie. Now, I was watching a documentary the other day about, they're talking about how they took Baghdad. And I noticed something that kind of bothered me. They only talked about 2 units, and they said these units took Baghdad and stuff like that, too. And I was looking at it, I'm like, no, they weren't the only ones that took it. There was a bunch of units that came in together and took it. And I remember that firsthand because I was there when Baghdad fell, because I helped take it. My unit helped take it down. But it's like a lot of these people were trying to take, I don't know how to explain it. It almost seems like they were trying to say there's only a few people who were involved and stuff like that too. It was the entire expeditionary force were involved in taking Baghdad. We all played an important part. We all took a part of the city in order to go into it. Now, the push up to Baghdad was a long and exhausting one. We were in the back of what's called AAVs, amphibious assault vehicles. If you want to look it up, I'll throw a picture right here for a minute. That is what an AAV is. So basically speaking, it is an armored vehicle, a transport for infantry guys. And on the top, it has a 50 caliber machine gun and a Mark 19 mounted on top of it. There's some hatches on the top that you fold back, and the guys inside hold security while we're going around somewhere. And there's also a ramp in the back that also has a door on it. And it's got tracks, so it can go anywhere, and it can also swim in water a little bit. It's kind of like a boat that floods a bit when you go into it. And then it goes on land, and you can do a lot because it's an armored vehicle. So it would have been a very long road. Stops along the way, non-stop, digging in for the night, literally getting maybe, if you're lucky, an hour of sleep in a day. It was just absolutely exhausting. We dig a fighting hole, which was like 6 feet deep, not 6 feet deep, but up to our chest. I'm 6'1". It was about up to our chest, fit for 2 people. And it would literally take us like 6 hours to dig a fighting hole like that, set up the parapet and everything like that. And we finally get a chance to relax, and all of a sudden we get the call, all right, load up the tractor, let's go, we gotta go right now. And then we have to fill in our holes after 6 hours digging, hands blistered all up. Then we have to get in AAVs and rush down the highway again because we were taking the highway into Baghdad. First we go in through the desert, then we took the highway, and we hit a bunch of towns along the way and stuff like that too. And that's pretty much what the getting towards Baghdad felt like. It was just a non-stop, just exhaustion, digging holes, coming across fighting positions. We came across a lot of fighting positions, but majority of which were empty. Because the Iraqi military wasn't paid very well, and the second they realized that we were close, they abandoned their positions, they abandoned their posts, and they ran away, or they tried to surrender to us. However, we took a lot of pot shots along the way. You'd be in the track and hear ting ting, noises on the outside, or RPG would fire occasionally or something like that. But we didn't get any serious injuries. the first injury our unit ever got is a blue on blue. So there was, if I remember, it was a Cobra that mistook an AAV for an armored vehicle because the AAV didn't have their marking on the top, and they took it out, and that was the first, you know, casualties that we had in our unit. But up to this point, we've been on the road for over a week, and we come across all these built like full-fledged fighting positions with T-72 tanks that were just like abandoned, or the CAT teams came and blew the tanks up, and they were literally just completely abandoned. We come to these fighting positions, you're like, holy crap, and we'd get out, we'd get online, and we'd get ready to rush it, and we'd go there, and there was nothing there. There was no one there. Sometimes we found lit cigarettes that were still lighting, or like hot tea or something like that, and they literally had just ran as soon as they saw us coming. Now, one day, the desert turned from desert to this kind of green kind of desert, where there's a lot of green all over the place. I mean, it was pretty. It was actually kind of pretty. We came to this area, and we made another fighting position for the night. So another fighting position. We just dug our holes, another 6 hours to dig the holes. And this is one of the first nights that we actually got a little bit of sleep. I think I got about 3 hours of sleep if I was lucky that night, because we go in different watches and stuff like that, and you have some jerks naturally, because I talked about some of the people that were in my unit and stuff like that, that basically what they would do is they would be woken up for watch, and then they'd immediately walk over to my hole or a hole next to them, to another guy that's actually dependable. They wake us up and pretend that they just stood their 1.5 to 2 hour watch, and then we'd take over a 4 hour watch. So I'd like wake up like, I just stood watch like an hour ago. Why am I doing this now? It doesn't matter. It's your turn. It was a bad scenario, and I was exhausted. I was always one of the guys that would do my duty. I stood my duty. I stood my ground. I stood my post. But a lot of guys didn't do that. Several guys didn't do that. They're kind of buddies, and they just got away with it, and they got a lot more sleep than some of us did. But anyway, we finally, the morning came, and I was exhausted, still just absolutely exhausted. Had my M203 grenade launcher and my sleeping bag with me, because I had to sleep with it inside my bag, because I was a junior Marine, when the senior Marines kept it outside of their fighting hole where they could grab it, which never quite made sense to me. But anyway, I don't want to get into the whole, you know, the politics behind that and stuff like that. But what happened is we were woken up in the morning, and we grabbed MRE just to grab something to munch on. And then I remember I think I was pulling out, it was probably one of those crackers. I think it was a cracker with a jalapeno cheese. It was just a munch on something or something like that. And then we got the call, we got to, you know, fill up the holes and go. And we're like crap in the middle of it. So you're rushing to eat it, and then you're filling up your hole and stuff like that too. Then you get out, you're exhausted, you're carrying so much weight. I was a 203 gunner. I carried a total on my chest. I carried 6 magazines for my M16. That was M16A2, and I had 30 rounds in each of those. I had 22 rounds of HEDP. I was a grenadier, so high explosive dual purpose grenade rounds. I had those on my chest that I was using. I also had star clusters and stuff like that. They're like for making marks and stuff like that and signs. And then I was also the A gunner, so I had extra ammunition in my assault pack. That's a pack kind of like that, a pack that we wear on our backs, not the rucks. The rucks are attached to the actual AAVs. I had extra drums for the machine gunner, or for the 249 gunner, the saw gunner. And I think I had about 400 rounds for them. And on top of that, I was also carrying a small rocket. We had a lot. And as a junior Marines, we were given all the heavy stuff. Okay, you guys got it, so you go do it. That's just how it worked. So we would carry all the heavy stuff. So we're completely bogged down, while, you know, the other Marines weren't bogged down. And then we get into the vehicles, and we get into the AAVs. And I had gotten to a point where I just couldn't stand being underneath inside the AAVs behind the walls, because it gets ridiculously hot, and we had like 22 guys crammed into that little tiny AAV. It was just sweating and hot by the engine, and it was just annoying. So I would hold security all day long. I would literally stand up, and 20 hours, I don't care what it was, I would just stand just watching out, holding flank security, fighting to stay awake, just like the other guys up there, because none of us wanted to go inside. We just didn't want to go inside. So we'd be out there just holding the flank security. Now, so by the time I'd seen tons of fighting positions, so we've gone by them, we've cleared them out and stuff like that too. So we get into the tracks, and we're getting ready to go. We set our stuff down where we can grab it when we got to dismount. And then out of nowhere, we started hear the thumping of the big mortars. They were the 81s, the 81 millimeter mortars. I think it was 81 millimeters. The big ones that were just going off and we're launching, like, whoa, and they're pretty loud when they're going off, and they're pretty close. And we weren't even moving yet. We were still loading up the tracks. And then it's like that, you could hear them. You could actually look up in the air and see like the vapor cloud, like as it was floating in. And then you hear the impacts, and the impacts weren't that far away. They weren't that far away at all. We were briefed that there was a significant force of Republican Guard that we were expecting to come across. Now, to this point, we had only had small arms fires. We had a little bit of small arms fire. We did a little bit of returning fire, but it was nothing serious or nothing crazy. So we get in the track and we're rushing down the road. We're in a straight line, and we're just going down the road, and you know, diesels screaming in your face and stuff like that too. And we start coming up to another fighting position. You kind of see it when you're coming up to it. And it looked like every other fighting position that we had come across, which was like all, you could tell there's trenches and all this other stuff out there. And I'm going to say it was probably, I'm going to say we were about 100 yards away from where they were located, maybe 120 yards tops to where the actual fighting position was located. It was like right to the right of our vehicle. So I was actually standing security on the right side. I don't remember what the left side looked like because I was focused on the right side and the guys on the other side are focused on that side. I remember coming up to this fighting position. I had my 203 ready. I'm getting ready. I'm just looking around like I always do, and I'm kind of resting the muzzle, which I want to talk about real quick. Mistakes I talked about. I rested my muzzle on the edge of this where it's like vibrations all day long and stuff like that. I'm just sitting there looking out, and we see this fighting position getting ready to engage anything. Then out of nowhere, unlike all the other fighting positions we went to, it went from this quiet to just a explosion of muzzle flashes. Wherever we could see, just straight out, just all over the place. You hear rounds cracking over your head like a whip. It sounds like if you take a belt, you crack it over someone's head. That's kind of what it sounds like. Some of them are so close, you feel the warmth of them. You can see the rounds actually impacting on the side of the AAV, hitting our bags. You can see it bouncing off in between us and stuff like that. You could always tell when they were shooting at you because they did the whole, they'd stood up and they pulled their AKs and they just shoot in a different direction without looking. So it always seemed like they're shooting around you and never actually aiming at you. But so we started taking some pretty heavy fire, and RPGs were being launched, and we had a couple RPGs that skimmed across the road and stuff like that too. And without hesitation, I didn't even have to think about it. I started firing back without hesitation. My adrenaline was picking up. Like a lot of people say when you're in a situation like that, a lot of people say, oh, you're going to crap your pants and all this other stuff, and you're not going to be able to function. No, that's not what happened. I did not even hesitate. I pulled the trigger. Without a hesitation, I started squeezing triggers. I think I was one of the first people to actually start firing off next to the 50 cal that was mounted. I was actually one of the first people to start firing off my my M16A2. So I was just firing off rounds left and right, semi-automatic, just firing at whatever muzzle blast is, because you couldn't actually see the Haji, or the what do you call them? Now you couldn't actually see the Republican Guards guys. All you could see were the muzzle flashes that were coming from them. So we would just open fire on the muzzle flash and shoot the best we could. Now, I was a grenadier, so my job as a grenadier was to take care of dead space or bunkers and stuff like that. So I loaded up several 40 millimeter rounds. So the 203, there's a little tube on the bottom, 40 millimeter tube. You close it shut, put the safety off, and boom, there's a little safety on the trigger, and you boom, and you start launching them. And it kicks pretty heavily, and you fire one round at a time. So breech load, unload another one. So I aimed in, I put my quadrant sight. I had a leaf sight in the front, then I had a quadrant sight on the side of it. And the mistake I made is I took a look up, I reached up, I opened up my quadrant sight, I looked through it, and I started firing with my quadrant sights, and the rounds fell ridiculously short, like dropped within 50 yards of where we were, just so where the rounds would just about arm, and you start seeing a blast like that. And I couldn't figure out what was going on because I was aiming around 100 yards. I was using the quadrant sight instead of the leaf sight. Now, what had happened was all that time that I spent on the top of the AAV when my muzzle was resting on the side, the vibrations screwed up the actual sight adjustments on that. So my sights were way off when I started doing it. So I launched several, then I launched a bunch of 2 or 3 rounds, then I had to adjust it and shoot a couple more and stuff like that. And then the fight just went on. It just seemed to go on and on and on. And then we got to a point where we were told to dismount. Now, the adrenaline was kicking, but I had a full function of my fingers, full function of my hands. A lot of people say you don't do that. I had complete function of my body. It was like you were in a dream, is the best way to explain it. It's like you were in a dream. So we were in this kind of dream state and just doing what we're trained to do. So what happened is we're sitting there and we're taking that fire. And then what we do is we were told to dismount from our vehicles. So we got out of our vehicles, we dismounted from our vehicle, our AAVs. We do a quick little security, then we get online, we start rushing the objectives and actually start attacking the target. So we start moving out. Now around this time, we had one guy that was kind of a trash talker the entire time. It's kind of, we'll just say he was a bit of a jerk compared to most of the guys in there. Hey, Nathan.
Hi, Daddy.
Hello, how's it going?
I'm Nathan.
Thanks. That's Nathan. That's my middle son. So anyways, what happened, we dismounted and we had this jerk that was in there. And this guy was talking trash all the time and how hardcore he was and stuff like that. And he was a team leader and one of our senior Marines and stuff like that. He froze. And our sergeant literally had to shout at him to try to get him out of the vehicle, and literally almost had to kick him to get him out of the AAV to get on the line, because he was pretty much in a frozen state, in a state of shock. So he got out, and he was a team leader, so this was kind of a crappy thing, because he was in charge of a team. Oh no, he was squad leader, my bad, he was a first squad leader. So he got out and he got online, and finally it clicked. It finally clicked in. Then he shifted into gear, but he had that minute of hesitation. He was the only person on the entire AAV that we could tell had that hesitation. Now the guys that were on the top holding security, we were sitting up there just returning fire until the guys lined up, and then the 50 cal would take over and they would start taking over fire. Then we'd dismount the vehicle, we'd set up with our fire teams, we'd get online, we'd start rushing the objective. So we started rushing the objective. You're shooting your way through this objective. You're seeing what you've done after all the shooting. You've seen what's going on in the trenches and stuff like that, and it's rough to see when you first do it. And then we fight our way through that specific fighting position, and then after we were sure it was cleared, we got back onto the AAVs, and we weren't taking more fire or anything like that. Then we got back in the AAVs and went. Now we were told we were there for right around 20 minutes. All right, around 20 minutes. It felt a lot longer than 20 minutes. It really did feel a lot longer than 20 minutes. They also said at the end of that fight, our three AAVs, we had three AAVs that were engaging that little target around. There's about 22 guys in each AAV. In that 20 minutes, we killed over 250 Republican Guard, is basically what they said in that fight. So, but anyway, so we took on that fight, we moved on to that, and then, but that wasn't the end of the fight. And this is the very first firefight I've ever been in my life. Now, I had a malfunction with my 203. I had a malfunction with the 203. A 203, the safety on a 203, it's like a, let me call it like, almost like a Mini 14 or M1A safety, where it's in a trigger guard, except it's kind of more in the trigger guard. You got to pop it up to get it to work. Well, mine, it was broken in it, but it broke open. All right, so I couldn't close the safety and close it down there. So I was running around with a 40mm grenade launcher, 200, a dual HEDP round in the breech of my 203 nonstop, being very cautious about trigger, because that was a light trigger. And I was kind of nerve-wracking, but at the same time, it's just like it was what it was. We didn't have an armor nearby, so I had to deal with it. So we get out there and we move off of that fighting position, and we didn't realize it it was right around almost the entire day. This started in the morning and it ended by late afternoon or evening, kind of like mid-afternoon or early evening is what happened, is when it stopped. And it was just like fighting position after fighting position. We had to go through a town, we had to go through a city, we went through a place that was just loaded with AKs and weapons. We pulled those out, we crushed them up, we set them on fire so the enemies couldn't get a hold of them, and then we moved on. This fight just went on pretty much all day long. Now, at the end of the fight, we obviously needed resupply for ammo and whatnot. We were moving so fast and on our way up to Baghdad that we had to wait for our resupply. So we had to wait in the middle of a highway. We were sitting there waiting. A bunch of us were just waiting for our resupply to catch up to us, because we needed more ammo, we needed more rations and whatnot. So we're just sitting there waiting. And I was never really a smoker at the time. But after that is when I first started smoking heavily, is because after that whole thing went down, it's literally like you just felt exhausted afterwards, and all the bumps and whatever bruises that you took on it, you start feeling them, you start feeling aches and stuff like that, and you're just kind of quiet, and everyone's just sitting there quiet, like, wow, that just really happened. I mean, it literally felt like we were in a dream. It literally felt like we were in a dream, like, wow, what did that actually happen today and stuff like that. And we were just sitting there kind of just waiting, and then a convoy came by, and we all kind of snapped out of it. Part of another convoy came by, and we had some souvenirs left over, like berets and stuff like that too. And then a couple guys got out, and for the way how they got rid of the, it kind of just broke the silence, I guess you could say. They set up like a little banner that said, I don't remember what it was, but it was hilarious. They wrote it, they said, we'll do something for cigarettes. I don't remember exactly what it was. And they're holding this banner out, and they're dressed up like the, you know, the Republican Guard, just like the berets on and stuff like that. While a convoy was going, the rest of the, you know, another supply convoy was going by. And it kind of broke the silence, and we all just kind of started coming back to it and stuff like that, because it's just, we had to do something to get it out of us. But that was my introduction, guys. That was my baptism by fire. Now, the reason I wanted to do this video is I've noticed in a lot of these channels out there, when they talk about firearms and stuff like that, some of these tactical channels, they actually seem like interested, or like they're excited about wanting to get into a firefight. I'm like, oh, I can't wait for this to happen, you know, yada, yada, yada. Then you have other channels that give you all these myths and stuff like that. Oh, this will never happen, and your body won't work in that firefight and stuff like that too. And honestly, guys, is after you've been in them, after you were in the first one, all the other ones were pretty much easy after that. But after you've been in one, it's something that you'll remember very vividly for the rest of your life. Absolutely vividly for the rest of your life. It's something that will never go away. The stuff that you did, the aftermath and everything else, it's something that will never go away. And it's something you have to live with. Now, at the time, we were kind of nervous, we were excited, we were scared all at the same time. But at the end of the day, we're just humans. We're just humans. And it really felt like, I can only explain it as it felt like a piece of my soul was just ripped from my body. Is the only way I can explain it. And I felt like I was slightly empty after that. So for all the channels out there that are kind of pushing for the excitement of firefight and blah, blah, and all this other stuff, honestly, guys, it's really nothing to get excited about. It really is nothing to get excited about. It's not something you ever want to find yourself in. And I pray that you will never have to go through the stuff that we had to go through. And we were in combat, but I pray you never have to go through anything like that in the real world as it is. Anyway, guys, if you like this video, like, share, subscribe, tell your friends about me. And remember, guys, it's our responsibility to take care of each other and protect each other. Peace.